The entire history of Hong Kong in 100 seconds. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to do something different. We are going to learn the entire history of Hong Kong in just 100 seconds. Are you ready? Let's go back in time. In the beginning, there was no Hong Kong. There were only fishermen and seafarers from China who occasionally visited the area around 200 BC. For over 1,000 years, this part of the world was ruled by various Chinese dynasties until the Song dynasty, when the first permanent Chinese settlement was built. This was around the year 960 AD. But it wasn't called Hong Kong yet. It was known as Xiangjiang, which means fragrant port. During the next few centuries, Xiangjiang remained a small fishing village until the Ming dynasty, when it started to grow. By the 18th century, Hong Kong had become one of the busiest trading ports in China. It was a great place to live if you were rich. But if you were poor, life was still very hard. Many people lived in extreme poverty, and some even had to resort to piracy to survive. But the Chinese government cracked down on the pirates, and so many of them fled to Hong Kong. By the early 1800s, Hong Kong had become a haven for pirates. At this point, the Chinese government didn't care about Hong Kong. They left it alone because it was too far away and too difficult to reach. But then the British came along and changed everything. In 1841, the British invaded and took control of Hong Kong Island. They fought 3 wars with the Chinese to keep it, and in the end, they won. In 1860, the Chinese lost Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, and the New Territories. The British were happy with their new colony. They built new roads, schools, and hospitals. They also introduced a new currency, the Hong Kong dollar. Under British rule, Hong Kong became one of the most important financial centers in Asia. It was also a major shipping and trading hub. But it wasn't all good news. The British exploited the Chinese workers and forced them to work in terrible conditions. Many people became ill and died. But the British didn't care. They just kept working them harder and harder. Then came World War II. Japan invaded Hong Kong in 1941 and took control of it. They stayed for 3 years until 1945. During this time, they did terrible things to the people of Hong Kong. They starved them, beat them, and killed them. After the war, the people of Hong Kong were very happy to see the British come back. They had missed their old way of life. In the 1950s and 60s, Hong Kong experienced another economic boom. It became even richer and more successful. But at this point, the Chinese were very angry. They wanted their colony back. They asked the British to give it back to them many times, but the British refused. They didn't want to lose their most valuable colony. Then came the Tiananmen Square protests. In 1989, the Chinese people protested against their government. They wanted more freedom and democracy. But the government wouldn't listen. They sent in the army to put down the rebellion. Many people were killed or imprisoned. After this, the Chinese government became even more oppressive. They didn't want anyone else to know what had happened. So they blocked all the newspapers and TV stations. They also started arresting people without charging them with a crime. It was like living in a police state. But then something amazing happened. A young man named Fang Liji escaped from China and found refuge in Hong Kong. He was a scientist who had been working on a new type of engine. The Chinese government didn't want him to escape, but he made it anyway. When he arrived in Hong Kong, he was greeted as a hero. The people of Hong Kong admired his bravery and they were happy to help him. He was given a house and a job at a university. He was also interviewed by reporters from all over the world. Fang Liji's presence in Hong Kong caused a lot of problems for the Chinese government. They tried to get him back, but Hong Kong wouldn't give him up. They saw this as a chance to show the world that they were different from the mainland. They were a place where people could come to be free. In 1997, Hong Kong was returned to China. This was a very emotional time. On one side, there were the British leaving after 97 years. On the other side, there were the Chinese taking over. Everyone was wondering what would happen now. Would Hong Kong become like mainland China, or would it stay the same? The Chinese government promised that Hong Kong would stay the same for 50 years. They said that it would keep its own currency, its own laws, and its own way of life. The people of Hong Kong were happy to hear this. They liked their way of life and they didn't want to change it. But not everyone was happy. Some people were worried that the Chinese government would break their promises. They were afraid that Hong Kong would become like mainland China, with censorship and no freedom. These people were called the Pan-Democrats. They wanted more democracy and freedom for Hong Kong. But the pro-Beijing government wouldn't listen. They kept telling the Pan-Democrats that they were wrong and that Hong Kong was better off as part of China. In 2003, there was a big protest in Hong Kong. 500,000 people marched on the streets to demand more democracy. But the government wouldn't budge. They said that Hong Kong couldn't have democracy because it wasn't ready for it. They said that the people of Hong Kong weren't educated enough to vote. In 2014, there were even bigger protests. This time, students occupied parts of the city to demand the right to vote. But the government wouldn't listen. They used police dogs and pepper spray to force the students off the streets. In 2019, there were even bigger protests. This time, people were protesting against a law that would allow the government to extradite people to mainland China. The people of Hong Kong were worried that this law would be used to target political dissidents. They were afraid that the government would arrest people without charging them with a crime and then send them to mainland China. The protests were led by students, but soon people from all walks of life joined in. There were people from the business community, the labor unions, even the police force. At one point it seemed like the whole city was protesting, but once again the government wouldn't listen. They passed the extradition law anyway. On June 30th, 2020, the National People's Congress of China passed a resolution to impose the national security law on Hong Kong. This law gives the government of Hong Kong the power to crack down on people who oppose the government. Since then, many people have been arrested and jailed for opposing the government. Hong Kong has changed a lot in the past few years. It's not the same place that it was before. And that's the entire history of Hong Kong in 100 seconds. If you want to learn more about any of these topics, I've included links in the description below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.